All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Palantir Weekly. We are number 27 in the game. So,
Dude, that fucking bell, man. I hate that
already.
It's the only
bell.
reason why I'm here. It's for the bell.
It's for the bell. And please send some super chats because we know Chris just fucking ruined the monetization already.
We
Anyway,
we need to get you a new bell, dude. I can't. Whoa, just
I'm here.
disappeared.
And we already lost the camera. There it is.
Yeah.
We're off to a great start here on number 27.
Dude, Audia funding must be running a little dry, bro.
I knew I should have invested more.
You knew you should have invested. Okay, so we're going to talk about Palantir. They put out a Stanley Drunken Miller or whatever.
It's Drucken Miller. Drucken Miller.
I literally spelled his name wrong on the Palantir Daily account. I was like, oh, that's not very professional, but whatever. We're going to talk about the interview in a little bit. That was a great interview, a lot of stuff there. Before we get into that, first of all, thank you, 43 people, for being here. Really appreciate it. We're going to talk about a little bit about the macro. For those who don't know Joel, he's a friend of the channel. He is the J Tesla Hyperbole in the upper right. And he's Palantir investor, Tesla bull. So he's just here joining us on our 27th episode. Macro. Resident Tesla bull. That is correct. Dow, I think, down 800 points. S&P down good 4% for the week. Went from about 410, ended at 384. Bad week for the markets. CPI data kind of sucked. I guess let's just talk about where you see the market right now, and are we due for a rebound? Are you buying? Chris, let's start with you.
I mean, the CPI data is looking backwards, right? So I think a lot of the effects of the rate hikes are already kind of baked into the market a little bit. Things are starting to come down in price. You know, the main driver of this inflation was, one, supply chain, and two, the price of energy. So as the supply chains thaw and energy comes down in price, automatically you're going to see some level of inflation reduction. Also, China and Europe are not exactly doing very well either, right? So that pretty much means that there's a lot of demand destruction that's going around. From what I'm hearing, there's a lot of inventory buildup, and the FedEx interview that we saw with the FedEx CEO, even he confirmed it, like, hey, listen, don't expect much from us in terms of a higher guidance for next year, because we're starting to see a lot of softness in the delivery side. So when you see like Elon Musk, the CEO of FedEx, I'm not going to say Kathy Wood. Kathy Wood, in my opinion, has lost a lot of credibility, but Elon Musk has a ton of credibility. So guys like that, they're literally telling you up front, like, hey, deflation is here, so you better be careful. I hope the Fed takes that into consideration and not go a little too crazy. I know some people are saying, oh, we should just do 100 bips. I don't think so. I think it should be a measured 50, but more than likely they're going to do 75.
Matt, did the CPI data not basically, Elon says deflation is coming. CPI data deflation doesn't look like it's coming. How do you kind of resolve that, and why did you choose to buy this week if you bought any stocks that you bought?
Well, I'm buying because I don't really care about what the price is tomorrow or next week or 6 months from now. I'm caring about where I think the price is going to be in 10, 20 years from now. So I think a lot of people, when they hear me investing, I'm investing for myself, not necessarily dictating and saying that you should be buying. I think it's more along the lines of, let's take a step back. I honestly think that there could be more pain here. I think that we could see another 5 to 10% leg down. But I think what will be relieved, I think if we do a 75 basis point hike next month, or I guess next week rather, I think the market will probably rally into that like it normally does when we have done 75 basis point hikes. And I think that that'll put a brief stop to it. But I think when we get the September data, I think that we'll see that things are honestly heading in the right direction. I'm honestly surprised with lumber prices, metals prices, all the commodities prices being down as much as they are. I think the only thing that's honestly holding up the CPI is the fact that oil is up year over year pretty substantially, the fact that rent prices are up substantially, housing prices are moving in the right direction. So I think until we really start to see, I mean, I've seen plenty of houses getting cut 5% a week for the past 5 weeks. Like some houses are just getting, so anyway, I think we're heading in the right direction. And I agree wholly with the supply chain piece. It's easing. I anticipated that it would happen more in the second half of 2021. It's taken an additional year. But I think we are starting to see it. And I did actually see some articles, which I thought was funny. A year ago, we were always complaining about all the ships that were off the west coast of the United States being like, oh my God, we have such a buildup of all these ships trying to offload and we don't even have it. And everyone's just like, where are all the ships? They're all gone. So I think that the supply chain piece has eased quite a bit. You're seeing prices come down. I've seen cuts, just like I said last week, cuts, or maybe it's 2 weeks ago, cuts in food prices coming down. And so I think that people will start to tighten their belts as they have. And that'll move things in the right direction. I think I skipped over your question though, Amit.
But no, my question was with the CPI data, how do you feel about buying? And you kind of answered it. You're like, look, you think a lot of things are coming down, commodities. You're also buying for the long term. So CPI data really is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll say this last sentence, then I'll hand it over to the room again, is I'm a firm believer that if you see a decent price, you have to take advantage of it because you can't guarantee what the price is going to be tomorrow. So if I see 385 on the SPY, that's a great price. I would have jumped at it a year ago. I would have jumped at it, 6 months ago. And you can't guarantee that we're going to get back down to 360. I think we might hit 365 maybe in the next month or so. But historically, and Amit, you posted this on your Twitter, historically in midterm years, we rally into the fourth quarter. And I honestly think that we'll see that going into 2023.
Yeah, one thing I do want to point out is this is definitely an opportunity for a lot of great companies that have been kind of sold off during this downward move to get into them now, because now you're starting to see their valuations a lot better. Like an example is AMD. Like AMD, out of a lot of companies, they're still performing. They're still gaining market share on Intel and NVIDIA. So the question is going to be, okay, yeah, I get it that the macro is softening, but that doesn't mean that individual companies can't be performing beyond what the sector is doing, right? So I think a lot of times people are now getting caught up in, oh, well, the entire market is down. That means that everything is going to keep going down. Yeah, but that also means that good companies are also being sold off, and you could probably pick some up at a good sale price.
Not that you buy today, didn't you, Amit?
No. You know what? I have to address something. I did not sell any snow and buy Palantir. All right. Goddamn, what's his name? Jay put it out there, and that was like I think he got like almost like 60 likes on that and like a whole bunch of retweets. I am not getting back into Palantir unless they change some stuff around their business model. Yes.
What if I gave you money to invest in Palantir? Would you buy it?
I mean, dude, I'm not gonna turn away free money. If it's free, give me three.
It's a buyer Palantir, people. You heard it here first on number 27. He will buy Palantir.
We need to go.
Yeah, with free money, sure.
Okay, you said some stocks will be able to perform even if the macro is bad. So speaking of that, Joel's main stock, Tesla, has been resilient this whole week at 300, even though the S&P has been crashing, macro has been crashing. Joel, how do you feel about Tesla holding up at a $900 billion valuation? He had to go buy more. That's basically what happened. He was like, it's so good. He had to go buy more. I could tell his Wi-Fi was tripping. I was like, oh, this is my... All right. What do you guys think about Tesla doing well?
I think it just goes to show exactly what I was saying, which is you have an entire sector, like the auto sector is getting killed, right? Because right now auto prices are down, but that doesn't mean that the growth story behind Tesla gaining market share, not only in the EV space, but replacing a lot of ICE cars, that is going to be a trend for the next 10 years, right? That's not something that just is going to disappear overnight. So Tesla has a ton of backlogs. They have an infrastructure. There's so many verticals that Tesla has that if you can get it at a discount, you should be picking it up. But I am not a Tesla buyer though, to be honest with you, because the valuations on Tesla has never made sense to me, even though I know like some of the other valuations that I have don't make sense either. But in my opinion, Tesla is always going to be, at the end of the day, fundamentally a car company. And I know that other people, I know, Joel, go ahead. You've got a rebuttal against that thought, but go ahead.
I'm with you, Chris.
Well, Tesla is not fundamentally a car company. They're a robotics company. They're artificial intelligence company. They're an energy company. I only invest in Tesla looking 10 years into the future, seeing what they can do with the vehicles. They can honestly plug those cars into the grid and really disperse that energy that's being held in the vehicles back to the grid if they want to do that. But I mean, energy crisis in California right now.
Is it me or is Joel
yeah.
going robotic?
Joel, we need some Tesla Wi-Fi, my guy, to like fix this up. Okay, so the Wi-Fi is a little crazy. Joel, I think try talking again.
Hello.
Say a sentence. Be like, "Hello, I love Tesla."
I love Tesla. Tesla's artificial intelligence energy company.
Okay, it's good. Keep going. You're good.
Yeah, but if you look at what's going on in California with the virtual power plants that's in beta right now, it's definitely going to be the future across the whole world, across the anybody that owns a power wall, and especially the mega packs that they're deploying at a larger scale.
Yeah, and I mean, I think investors tend to agree because they are not letting Tesla fall right now, even though the macro, I mean, the S&P is down 30 points and Tesla performed well this week. So I guess we're going to see in the future. Obviously, people have different perspectives on Tesla, but it's holding up. It's holding up for now.
Tesla won't let the shorts win one bit. I mean, Elon won't. Yeah.
All right. We will see. We will see. Anything else crazy happened in the Mac? Oh, Adobe. So first of all, any thoughts on Adobe? First of all, did any of you know what Figma was before this thing happened? Okay.
I kind of heard about them, but I didn't know 100% who they were.
Okay, so they're big in the startup world. Purchased for $20 billion. We don't have to dive deep into the deal, but do you think an acquisition of that size proves we're not at the bottom if a public company can shell $20 billion for a startup, or it's just super strategic?
I think it's true. I think the CEO of Adobe is not a dumb guy. You know, he knows what he's doing. So at the end of the day, he either saw Figma as potentially a competitor that he needed to take out that was eventually going to be a threat, in which case then if they end up taking market share and developing more products, then Adobe's on the back foot. Or the other thing, which is they're providing a new service to Adobe to do more with their existing product lines. So I think this was a strategic buyout. You know, sometimes you have to do it, you know, regardless of the and the other thing is, like, the valuation's not as crazy as people think. Like, their last round, they did 10 billion, like, yeah. And they were still growing. They're a hyper growth company. So it's not like they overpaid like crazy amounts. Like, they didn't do like a Twitter deal, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think so. First and foremost, the question I have for you, Ahmed, is what is the price for Audia, and would you sell it for 20 billion? And then that's obviously a facetious joke. But second, I don't think that this will be the first of many acquisitions. I mean, we've seen a slew of them already in 2020, 2021, with Salesforce buying Slack and, you know, all these other companies being bought up. But I think with valuations cheap and with some folks wanting to, I guess, hedge their losses, I wouldn't be surprised if other small tech companies that are hyper growth or have the ability to be acquired will be acquired. You have companies with hundreds of billions of dollars worth of cash sitting at their disposal, meaning the top big tech giants. And I don't think it's too dissimilar to what oil companies did in the early 2000s when they were really struggling and they had extra cash on hand and they did some mergers. I think anytime, and same thing in 2008 when all the banks started buying up all the other small banks, anytime you have blood in the waters is a great opportunity, especially if you have a good treasure chest to acquire. And I think that there's some really good companies out there that would fit better underneath umbrella, like a Google, Microsoft, or Apple. Yeah, that's kind of all I'll say about that.
Yep. I agree. I mean, ultimately, Figma was going to go. They were doing 200 million ARR, going to do 400 for the year. They were going to go public eventually. I mean, when you're doing that much money, and so to me, it was Adobe got 32 billion, knocked off their market cap, and they paid 20 billion. So it was like a $50 billion thing to do this. But it's just because I think the macro was bad. Investors didn't like it, but they stopped them from going public. Like it was a $50 billion loss to stop that from happening in the future. And then eventually having to pay more for them in the future. John in the chat says these acquisitions will happen until the market turns around. Big fish eat smaller fish to get bigger. I agree. Also, it's hard to IPO right now. And like, it's a scary market to IPO. I don't know if you're going to be a $20 billion company, but it's much cooler to just get 20 billion.
And also capital, right? The cost of capital is rising like crazy. Like right now, if you're a company that's struggling to get like your to either IPO or to get new funding, like a lot of VCs have pretty much put the brakes on doing more investments right now. So when it comes down to it, when you can't go to the VC route as much as you were in the past, plus the cost of capital, if you end up taking on debt, is so high, all you're doing is sealing your fate to like towards a bankruptcy, because your run rate is going to just, you know, the money that you spend is just going to go out the door. And at the same time, if interest rates are rising, that means that now you have an additional pressure to perform. So yeah, I think sometimes I think in a better time, Figma, their CEO, probably wouldn't have sold. Maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago, had they come with an offer, they would have said no, either up it to a even crazier amount than what they got for it right now, or we won't do the deal. Right now, I think a lot of companies that are on the other end of the M&A spectrum, they're like, hey, listen, I may not be able to survive by the, you know, within the next 2-3 years, so I might as well just partner up with a bigger fish.
Yeah, I agree wholly with that, because you've had this opportunity to see what companies had something that was just plausible and really good in terms of revenue growth during the pandemic. And now that you have the ability to see what the retracement looks like, not necessarily from a stock price perspective, but more from an internal metrics perspective, is revenue still growing, or are you going the Shopify route where you're seeing anemic growth? Or, you know, that I think is where you have the opportunity of these big tech companies to cherry pick the good long-term companies to pull in underneath your umbrella. And I think that's exactly what Adobe did.
Yeah, I think Apple going down the car route, they're going to have to acquire possibly Volkswagen or Porsche. I know Porsche is playing, but speaking of acquiring companies, I just don't think Apple's going to build any automotive factories in the future. You know, they don't have the long-term supply chain things intact for that kind of product development. So I think they're going to end up acquiring an automotive company like VW or Porsche, or maybe something even smaller. But I think that's the route they're going to play with if they do eventually make a car in the future.
Speaking of Apple, right before we get into Palantir, it's good you brought that up, Joel. Apple released the iPhones last week. Stocks at around 150. A lot of talk that it's a bit overvalued. It's a $3 trillion company. If we let it get to 180, market didn't really care about the innovations of the iPhone, because to be honest, there weren't that many innovations. Either the next exponential leg of growth, because again, they're basically a $3 trillion company, is either the headset, which depends on us caring about the metaverse, the car, which depends on them actually competing with Tesla, and or services, which is probably the most likely. They're going to double their advertising revenue, all of that stuff. How do you guys feel about Apple right now? Like, is it a safety play? Is it a nice play? If you have $150, would you rather buy 20 more shares of Palantir? Like, how do you think about Apple? Matt, we can start with you.
I was just going to look up, hopefully you were going to choose somebody else, but I was just going to look up what the price to earnings ratio was.
Let's start with Chris then. Chris, go ahead.
But I think, I can go. I think a lot of people might just be saying, oh, well, 25 price to earnings, right? But you think about it, great companies that have premium moat positions trade in the low 20s to mid 20s price to earnings ratio, right? It's even if it doesn't necessarily have the growth, if it starts getting anemic growth and they don't really sustain where they're at, I can see where the 25x multiple gets a little bit too expensive. But I think with the premium products that they have, I don't foresee a 25x multiple being too expensive. When it was in the 30s and in the 35 range, like it was earlier this year, I could see why we're obviously pulling back a little bit in terms of the price. But now that it's kind of grown into that 25-ish range, I think it's good. And same thing with Google, right? I think Google trading at a low 20 PE is healthy. And I think at this point, actually, it's trading below a 20 PE. So, I think where you get above and where it might not necessarily be fully valued, or where it may be overvalued, is when you start getting above the mid 20s, where it's kind of at now, and into the 30s. But I don't know. I've always kind of been kind of like what Chris said with Tesla earlier, and this has obviously lost me a lot of money. But I've never been betting against Apple, but I've always just thought, how can they keep up this massive growth, right? With the number one product ever being sold, which is the iPhone, and they continue to make, literally $100 billion a year in gross profit. And yet they continue to surprise the crap out of me. I never thought it would get this big. I've always thought that it would crumble, but I think with them pricing it at the same value as they did the last phone, meaning the latest phone is the last phone, I think maybe that's a short-term windfall based off of just the current environment that we're in, and maybe they'll kickstart it, in a year or so when they release the next phone. But I don't know how they will continue to sustain where they're at today without releasing a monumental product. But that all being said, I thought the same, but then they got their services. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. But anyway, that's how I feel about Apple.
Yeah, I tend to I try not to doubt Apple, because anytime I'm in I think they've topped out, they always come up with something new, right? And it doesn't just have to be a consumer product, but it can also be an internal thing that ends up propelling the next level of growth. So an example is they used to use Intel chips in all of their MacBooks and all of their products. Then they switched to a custom silicon by themselves, and it's great. Everyone loves it. So it just goes to show that in terms of design, these guys are the kings of design, So the other thing also is that they're still gaining market share all around the world. Like, a lot of people forget that the market for phones is huge. If you go to India right now, I know this is an anecdotal evidence, but if you show someone that, hey, you have an Android phone, whatever, everyone's like, okay, yeah, whatever. But iPhone, you're on the wealth train, right? So even older iPhones, if you take them to India, people will buy them. People are impressed by that. So I think that there is a whole brand recognition there too, and just that ecosystem is starting to get developed, and it's starting to make an impact in other parts of the world also. So the other day I was actually, one of the things I like doing is just whenever I'm hypothesizing something, I try to look around and see what the changes are. So an example is, am I seeing more Teslas today than I did 2 years ago? And yeah, I see a ton more Teslas, especially in New York City. And the first question I ask myself is how are they charging all these Teslas? But yeah, the number of Teslas on the road is much more noticeable now. So you can see that growth happening. The other thing is with Apple, I can't tell you how many times I get on the bus or the subway and either everyone has an AirPod or an Apple Watch. I'm like, man, and what are the margins that they're getting on these things? Dude, those AirPods, they cost Apple probably maybe $5-10, and they're selling for $300.
Cost
right?
them 5 cents to make it, bro. It's
Not
cheap.
5 cents. Yeah, it's probably a little bit more than that, considering all the other stuff that goes into it. But think about it. So one of the reasons why I don't think Apple is necessarily going to go into the car market is it's not in line with what their products are supposed to be like. Their product is something small, consumer focused, but they can extract tremendous amount of margin from it, right? That's what Apple does. If you look at any of their products, it's build it for this much and then sell it for 10 times as much. With a car, you can't necessarily do that. So, especially an electric car. Electric cars are, for the most part, with the exception of Tesla, who has a very vertically integrated production process, are actually not profitable, right? Even with all the subsidies and everything else, they're not that. That's why if you look at GM and all the Detroit manufacturers, they're still making ICE cars, because to eke out a profit on the EV side, it's getting there. It's starting to become more profitable, but it's not profitable yet. So I don't know how Apple would feel about coming up with let's say a $80,000 Apple car that maybe less than maybe 0.5% of the total population is going to be able to afford, right? Because it's not going to be able to be a mass market product. Maybe luxury, but not mass market. So yeah, I don't think Apple's going to go that route. The area that I do think Apple could do is partner with existing OEMs and say, look, if you want Apple to be in your ecosystem, you're going to have to pay us royalties and all the other stuff. Maybe that's a possibility, but I don't think that they're going to come up with their own car.
Agreed.
Yeah, definitely.
Joe, go ahead.
Definitely, speaking of Apple bringing things internally, I definitely could see them developing their own battery technology, just like they have with their own silicon and chips. That's a thought I've been thinking about, because they're already partnering with automotive manufacturers with Apple CarPlay. They just announced their new Apple CarPlay with Porsche, but that's probably all I have to say on the matter.
Okay. We will see what happens with Apple. Now, Palantir. So this interview that Stanley Druckenmiller had with Alex Karp, I thought was phenomenal. It was great to see the earliest investor 14 years ago who took a bet on the company, still holding his shares, in fact, doubling down on his position, and a mentee of Mr. George Soros, who does not like Palantir and completely liquidated his position as soon as the lockup ended in 2021. So it's interesting to kind of see the dichotomy that was there, and that's going to matter in a second when we talk a little bit more about globalization. So I want to share one quick clip from Twitter. It's a 40-second clip of Karp talking, and then I want to give some context, and then we'll get some thoughts.
Are disjoined.
Just turn the volume up. Okay.
We're in a world where the outside organizations are disjoined and disjuncted and need vertical and horizontal integration to interact with their clients and with regulators and with supply chains. They have the same exact problem with software on the inside, which is how we actually have grown from a tiny company with, not growing headcount, but because we maintain our software with a product. Every single company, every single government in the world will essentially have to build something like this or buy it from us. And it's a very, very hard product to build. And that product is, like many of our products, kind of looks very not sexy in the beginning, but then powers a lot of the action. We're in a world.
Okay, so a couple things there. First, someone in the chat says Amit is pulling an Alex Karp hairstyle. I absolutely am. If I can be as successful as him one day, that would be pretty cool. So Stanley Druckenmiller goes up to Karp and he says, Steve Jobs, speaking of Apple from the previous segment, created a product that the world didn't know they needed, this device that has trillions of dollars of capabilities built into it, and it changed the world, revolutionized the world. Alluding to Karp being a Jobs type of figure, I know Chris is throwing up in his mouth right now. He said, what products are you working on that the world doesn't know? Karp said, and this is very important to understand, I think it adds to the narrative of why why you would invest in Palantir right now. Karp said the world is deglobalizing. For the past 30, 40 years, everything was integrated. U.S.-China relations were relatively okay. We were able to make mass supply chains. That's why Apple makes everything in China. All that stuff was okay, even though ideologically we disagree with each other. The United States believed in individualism. China did not. We got through that because money talks. Now, with the instability that has been happening over the past, you could call it 5-6 years, especially accelerated by the Russia-Ukraine crisis, the world is deglobalizing. And in a world that is deglobalizing, authoritarian regimes don't have any incentive to protect your sovereignty, China to Taiwan, Russia to Ukraine, because it doesn't matter anymore. We're not going to give oil to the EU, so we don't need to worry about keeping good relationships with them, or at least not a good relationship, but not stepping on their toes. If that world continues, then how do smaller countries protect themselves? And Alex Karp said that the product they are working on is going to basically make smaller countries have the power as if they were big countries, not through nuclear weapons, but through software that enables them to at least stop the big guys from coming in. And this is what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. I think this is an incredibly philosophically interesting concept, and this is a probably $100 billion opportunity if every country in the world in a deglobalized world needs the most sophisticated and advanced software to stop them from getting invaded. That seems like a market opportunity to me when the company's worth $15 billion. Chris, what were your thoughts on Karp's answer to why he sees Palantir's products like the iPhone?
I mean, maybe the other guys can talk first, and I'll rebuttal after that. Go ahead, guys.
Okay, let's start with Joel. What did you think about that clip?
Well, you know how Drucker Miller, he said that build a product that people will eventually want and they'll come. That's basically what he was coming at. Because if you see, like, if you ever watch the Jobs movie, how meticulous Steve was with the first Mac, and he eventually got fired for being so meticulous. And then they brought him back because they were failing miserably. That we could be in a situation like that with KARP, honestly, where he needs to take a hiatus from the company and, you know, take some shrooms and refigure out the go-to-market strategy like Chris is upset with. But ultimately, they are building products that actually make a difference. We can see that with Ukraine and Russia. So maybe the whole world, this is, I think somebody said it's the showroom for these products. And if Ukraine is able to beat Russia using Palantir products, maybe the rest of the world will flock.
Matt, what were your thoughts on KARP saying it's really hard to build this type of product and a lot of countries may need it given the geopolitical world we're entering into?
I don't know too much on the geopolitical side, but I can say from the company operated side, using it on a day-to-day basis, just the ability for me to pull up data comparatively to the folks that I would say are maybe on the second half of their career and aren't as, say, data oriented or savvy with computers. It's very evident the ability for me to formulate a very good investment decision within our organization comparatively to someone that does not use that. And that doesn't necessarily just for oil and gas, but that just goes to show the inefficiencies that we have within organizations, that if you have data set up the right way with an operating system like Palantir, then it eliminates the need for, I guess, excess individuals. And I noticed that pretty substantially. The ability to create dashboards and understand where, say, your assets are or where they're coming from and where your cash is kind of coming from, which, because I see that on a pretty consistent basis, because that's what I kind of look after. Oil streams turn into cash revenue streams for us. If you have that set up appropriately, then the amount of efficiency in your organization will go up drastically. And then also your margins as any business would go up. And this isn't specifically talking about Palantir. This is talking about the effects Palantir would have on an organization. And to me, set up the right way, which I've been trying to do with an organization, that's a whole different story, utilizing the data that comes directly from our data lakes that connect up through Palantir and then eventually allow us to create the dashboards, eliminates a lot of use or need for excess engineers. And I think that that's part of the reason why some of the things that I like to do and create dashboards for within the organization are somewhat stopped, because that means that they need less engineers. I'm more on the end of, I would rather create cool dashboards that make the company money or save the company money or make the company more efficient. Some people are afraid of some of the dashboards that you were able to create for that exact reason. So I think it's very interesting. And I agree that goes back to what KARP was kind of saying. Eventually, companies will recognize the efficiencies and margin increases that you can get from utilizing products like that can create the dashboards. And I know Chris can kind of relate to how that might relate to other organizations, which could provide that sort of value as well.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with Matt on this one. When it comes down to it, you know, a lot of companies are still very early in their data journey, and they're still trying to do things themselves. Palantir is saying, look, try not to do things yourself. Work with us. We'll be able to actually do what you need it to do, right? It's going to take more cost. We're going to have to send our own guys to help you with it. But at the end of the day, you know that you'll have a successful working product. I think right now Palantir met with Zelensky, you know, it was for the purpose of trying to get Palantir to be utilized for the war effort. But Palantir is more than that. And I think if the war, I shouldn't say if, when the war ends, and if Ukraine ends up coming up the victor, which looks like that's going to be the case, then Palantir is going to have a head a head start in being way more involved in that space and planning all the reconstruction in Ukraine and getting their systems back up and running. I'm telling, eventually, if you're thinking about it, Palantir could end up being the central nexus by which runs country, right? But that's very, very optimistic, and I'm not sure how many countries would be willing to allow that to happen, because that just means that now your country's dependent on one company, right? To basically run. So I don't know how that's going to be effective. I think a lot of the comments that Alex Karp made, he needs to be a little bit more business focused. I think
Hold on. Drunken Miller asked him a question about vision. He compared him to the biggest visionary. Karp almost predicted this Russia-Ukraine thing in the Kevin Warsh interview in January. So when he's saying 5 years from now, it's going to be a deglobalized society, and countries like Poland and the other countries in the EU area near Belarus are going to be afraid of their sovereignty, and they're going to need software because they can't get a nuke, and Palantir is going to be there. That is an incredibly enticing value. And we're thinking about the macro when we're investing, just like you think about Tesla and electric
And I agree. I think that, the government's okay to let, say, Microsoft and AWS take care of all their cloud computing needs, right? So why would Palantir be any sort of different, right? Where, Microsoft and Amazon are able to do it. Why wouldn't a Palantir be able to do it for, say, a smaller organization or a smaller country?
That's a lot of fucking money. Sorry, I had to use my French for the 180 people here. That's a lot of money when you've got every NATO country in the world saying we need your software to protect us. Even if nothing doesn't happen, they have it as protection, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get a little bit of flack on this one, but it's okay. At this point, this is one of the reasons why I keep saying that Palantir needs to separate its Gotham defense business from its commercial business, because at the end of the day, Palantir right now, look at the NHS. Right now, there was that article that came out with the Register, right? With Palantir literally getting almost close to that NHS contract. And literally the entire article was literally Peter Thiel this, Donald Trump that. And I know that the minute that, let's say, this deal does go through and they sign it, it's going to be a court after court after court battle with all these woke liberal paid shills from George Soros, right? And it's not even like a hidden thing anymore. Everyone can, if you just dig a little bit into how things are working, there is a concerted effort not to let Palantir into a lot of these countries' infrastructure and also their thing. But if they didn't have that PR problem, dude, I think Palantir would have already got the NHS contract done. They had a contract for COVID. They blew it out the water. They did an amazing job. And yet they had to succumb to political pressure.
Federated data platform takes a long time.
No.
So I don't disagree with you, Chris. Sorry.
So my point is this, that you need a rebrand and you need a PR to get this stink off of your side. Look, the technology is amazing. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm telling you, there's no way that you're going to grow at a hyperscale level unless you're able to change the narrative. And changing the narrative is really, really hard.
What if the narrative fits them? What if World War III-esque type of things are happening, China, Taiwan, and that narrative is what they need for an acceleration in their growth?
No, that's what I'm trying to say. The narrative right now is that Palantir is still the secret spyware company that works for the CIA, that's American CIA funded. Literally, that is the narrative. So I don't know how many countries are okay with that kind of thing. Palantir is not that. The CIA is actually divested from Palantir. CIA doesn't even work with Palantir anymore.
But my point is, Chris, we know those, Denmark runs all on Palantir. Those countries, when it's a time of war, they're not going to worry about a Vice article.
Denmark runs on Palantir?
So I think
Karp's
one of the things that I think that makes it easy for a company like a Microsoft or a Google or Amazon to come in and not have any problems is because, I'm just going to be blunt, the media, generally speaking, is left facing. And because Palantir sits in the middle and they don't want to take sides, and they moved out of San Francisco to try to avoid the politics of, say, living in California and everything of the like, they're going to have that hate. And I think in the long run, that will probably do better for them because they're playing neutral, right? They're not right facing. In fact, Karp is, I believe, very left facing. But I think he wants to avoid that bias within the organization, which is why he moved it out and moved to Denver in the first place. He's even spoken very publicly that him and Thiel do not see eye to eye on politics whatsoever. So the fact that you have a very leftist man running the organization, but wants the company to remain neutral, but yet at the same time is being bashed as this rightist sort of company that's spy facing and everything of the like, I think it's pretty interesting. And I think more so says about what the media wants to hone in on based off of who owns what, rather than the reality of things.
Yeah, but see that once again, it just goes right back to a perception problem, right? There's a really good quote that was from Billions. It's like, someone says Charlie fucked a goat, even if the goat denies it, he goes to the grave, Charlie the goat fucker. And that's what's happening with Palantir right now. No matter how much these guys deny it, they try every single time. We do not store your data. We do not give your data. We don't sell your data. You still have the Ross Gerbers of the world selling. That's exactly what you do. That perception is very, very hard to break. And I'm telling you, unless they figure out a way to do it, they're not going to be that $1 trillion company that they can potentially grow up to be.
Well, interesting. Gabe says don't watch the movie. He says, I don't know if he's talking about Billions or Blue Chair says I'm getting that quote tatted on my chest. Okay. All right. Well, so that was the interesting part. Look, I thought it was interesting, the idea of creating a product that the world doesn't know they need. Look, I don't want us to get into a World War III type of world. But if it is inevitable with what's going on in China and Taiwan, then something's got to be done. And if Ukraine ends up coming out on top and it's explicitly, we don't know if it's because of Palantir. If it is, that's a hell of a marketing campaign. And I think hopefully that will overshadow the ignorance of people like Ross Gerber that just don't get it. Right.
Hey, Chris, you had a really good picture that you showed of a Ukrainian, I guess, general on your Twitter feed. Did you find out if that was Constellation or the product that they were using?
So it looked like Palantir Gotham to me, because everything that I saw with Gotham, well, let's bring it up. I'll actually show you some of the details of it that made me kind of point towards Gotham being the product that we're looking at.
Get it.
Yeah. So just pull that up and I'll put up Palantir Gotham on YouTube so we can take a look together.
And I did think it was funny during that, we haven't discussed it yet, so maybe we'll get into it, is they have yet to barely even monetize a lot of Apollo and Gotham and a lot of those other, well, I guess Gotham maybe to an extent they've already monetized with the governments, but I thought it was interesting in the discussion with Druckenmiller that they've only really been focusing on the commercialization of Foundry.
KARP said they're just beginning to sell Foundry. That's what you said. So
KARP sounded pretty excited, saying it's just the beginning. They have assets, obviously 2.4 billion. I mean, he feels good about their financial position and their trajectory for growth, especially being a company people thought would never make money. Now it's just a question of scale, right?
I think their YouTube advertising is not the best.
We're going to talk about
that video clips, and it's very out of context. And you're like, what is this ad? Because I've gotten countless Palantir ads, and I'm analyzing it who is watching this, understanding what they're looking at in the first place?
It's a really good point. For those who don't know, Palantir started advertising on YouTube, little 8-10 second clips. I think it's stupid, to be honest.
Not 8-10 seconds clips. It's like a minute and a half.
But no, everyone's skipping through it. No one's watching.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. Because I mean, LinkedIn, maybe you're targeting some CFOs or something, but YouTube, you're targeting Joel, who's trying to watch Stephen Mark Ryan jerk off the Tesla before he goes
exactly.
to
sleep. In the videos I was watching, I got 3 ads trying to watch Tesla content.
Yeah. So what you're looking at right now is the desktop that was on. He's not a Ukrainian general. I think he was head of their version of the NSA or something. I have to look up his exact title. But if you look at Palantir, the user interface, what you're seeing is on one side, you see this bar right here all the way on the right-hand side of the screen. that's going up and down, like go to the thing. You see that green, all those colors right there, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the starting points because I was like, oh, that looks really clean. And then when you see the what's right next to it, those are updates that you're seeing live that are coming in. So there's data being put into the system, and also that color blue that's there. That's a very Palantir-esque kind of like UI that's there. Also, if you look at the bottom part right there, that is a timeline, right? So basically, this way they can go back and forth to see what is going on, and the changes that are fundamentally being made. So let me just share what Palantir Gotham actually looks like on here.
What's it say in the upper left?
I don't know. Does it look like Palantir to you?
I don't know. It's
Chris, where's it from? What
looks...
country is this? Poland?
No, Ukraine.
Oh, this is Ukraine itself. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's
yeah. Right. All right. So share the screen that I put up. So you see this right here. That same UI. You see all the different things here. These are the different application tools. Look at just do the hold on one second. Can you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Okay. You see right here all these things, right? Now this guy has put them on the other side, but pretty much you can see the same status updates that are here. Even the timelines that you have, they're over here. If you look at some of the UI stuff, it looks very similar to what we would see with the same product, right? So you can see there's a lot of similarities that are there with it. Now that's why I said I'm not 100% sure. I can't really 100% definitively say that this is definitely Palantir Gotham, but the UI looks eerily similar, and I haven't seen anything else that looks as similar to that.
So can I just like jump in here? So like I think this is a perfect example. You see all the little buttons on the left-hand side of all the different applications that are built into, say, something like a Gotham for defense decision making. So what Palantir might end up doing is they might have those first three, let's just say, applications might be something that comes standard with Gotham that Palantir will bring to your organization. Say, hey, this is basically the first three applications that you have. You have an operating system that's kind of set around, say, logistics, or set around, say, just global operations and decision making like this. What other problems are you trying to solve? And those other, say, 6 or 7 applications that are sitting there on the left could be custom-made applications for, say, a logistics company, an Air Force company, a ground army company. And so that is really the power of these tools, is they come with, say, like, just like a word processor, or sorry, a computer might come with Excel and Word, right? Then you can add on, say, Google, and you can download Rocket League or Apex or whatever the hell you want to be able to do whatever you want to do. But this is exactly the same thing, except it's focused around specifically global decision-making and defense decision-making. And then you can create applications with coordination with Palantir to add on top of that. And so this is a perfect example. I've been trying to explain that using Foundry. I wish I could show you guys an example, but unfortunately I deal with proprietary data, and I also don't want to out myself too much about who I work for. So I think this is just a perfect opportunity to show that this is a operating system specifically built around decision-making, and then you can build applications on top of that based off of what kind of industry you're in.
It's a very App Store-like approach, right, Matt? Like, do you actually see them if they do hit scale, like companies legitimately building apps on top of them that are commercially viable to them because of Foundry, and that is a super bull case for them? Or is the application going to only be internally within the company? Like, your company will build an app on top of it, and it's
I don't know. So I have a very skewed view, right? Because I started working 2016, 2017, right? So that's kind of before they got a lot of other commercial products. Because initially, what we saw, I forget what we called it, but reports were a big thing, and we would kind of build all of our time series data within reports. And then it kind of came to the point where they started using Quiver only, and then reports was kind of like a byproduct of Quiver. So I don't really know, because a lot of the products they help, I don't want to say create from scratch with us, but they didn't have all the products that are kind of like typical Palantir applications when we first got together with them. They had like basically the spreadsheet thing, that basically the ability to stream data from a data lake, Quiver, and reports. And then since then, they've grown 3 or 4 additional sort of applications that come standard, I believe, with Foundry. And then they have a whole 20 or so applications that they've created in coordination with us for oil and gas specific applications that we use on a pretty regular basis.
Right.
By the way, Palmer Luckey was in Ukraine also. Just letting you know. So Andrew was there also. Not that, you know, a lot of people that was publicized nearly as much, but look out for Andrew. That's a solid company, man. You know.
Andrew, yeah, he put up a picture with Zelensky today, the Andrew Industries co-founder or founder, Palmer Luckey. And it's interesting because Andrew is a subcontractor of Palantir for the Titan contract that they're working on right now. Andrew in particular uses AI, machine learning, and software to power their hardware, which is why they're also a bit differentiated from a lot of the other defense contractors.
Also, the main thing, both of their two of their co-founders are former Palantirians. There's a lot of Palantir folk that work at Andrew. So just FYI.
Yes, I agree. Okay, let's. I want to get your guys' reaction. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, that was KARP. I wanted to get your reaction to this clip. I was like, oh, that was KARP. That was my boy talking real quick. Oh, that was KARP. Okay, let's hear what he says here.
Microfacts, like why is a Palantir resume so important? Well, the reason why it's so important to be at Palantir is because the educational institutions we have now don't provide the same level of legitimacy they did when we went to school. And there's things that like micro decisions, but basically that the decision making, right or wrong, you and I probably agree it's often wrong, but even if it was right, it's not viewed as strengthening legitimacy in the West. And there's all these.
So he's talking about a Palantir resume for good talent is interesting because if you have a Harvard degree, it doesn't matter that much anymore, right? It's like, okay, you went to Harvard. But if you have a Palantir 2-year, 3-year resume, it's like, oh, you worked for a mission-oriented company and actually did important things. Did that portion of the interview at all kind of justify the SBC to any extent in terms of getting the top talent that they have? I mean, like Drunken made a really big point around culture, and obviously because his daughter works there as well, about how they get that talent. Because they spent the first 30 minutes talking about how the product is so unique, and the last 30 minutes of how the company was able to do that. And it was all around talent. Do you think there really is a competitive advantage as well when we're building differentiated tech by creating a mission-driven culture that legitimizes you outside of a Stanford degree? Matt, go ahead.
Yes. So I'm an engineer as well, right? So I'm not trying to throw that in anyone's face. When I sat with these guys in 2016 and 2017, I was thoroughly impressed. I sit with engineers on a day-to-day basis, many of whom do not impress me, right? So I legitimately surround myself with really intelligent geophysicists that have PhDs and geologists that have PhDs and people that are well-educated from a college perspective that have been taught to think a certain way. And, like I said, that's no hit on anybody that hasn't gone to college or anything of the like. It's just, they're very intelligent people that are trying to build things. So I don't get impressed by those folks, and I deal with them on a day-to-day basis. Palantir comes in, and I'm like, what the hell? Who are these people, right? Like they just different, right? They act different. They talk differently. They're just on a different level in terms of what they're trying to do. And to me, that was purpose-led, right? They had a purpose, whereas I feel like the majority of the engineers that I have and work with, they're there to get their 9 hours in, collect their paycheck, and go home, right? So I see that little bit of difference when it comes to those guys, so much so that back in 2016, 2017, when there was no inkling of them going public, I told them, I'm a stakeholder in your guys' success. We obviously are helping build your company with the deal that we made. But as soon as you guys go public, I'm buying in. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, one of the I don't want to say conspiracy theories, but one of the theories that I have around Palantir is that the way that it's structured, and they call it themselves, they said they are an artist colony, right? And so they cultivate this top talent within their organization And then after that, these people seem to leave and found their own company. So almost like what we were mentioning last time, the PayPal mafia, right? Which is really nice and it's great. But who ultimately benefits from being able to identify these companies? And it all leads me back to the same thing, is all these VC funds that had invested in Palantir, they were able to get all these top engineers. These top engineers, instead of building value for Palantir, are going out and building more value. And guess what? The VCs that are buying into them are doing phenomenal. So here's an example. Founders Fund invested in Palantir, right? 20 years later, Palantir made them billions of dollars. You look at Anduril, their engineers, their CEO, their CO, and a lot of employees that worked for Palantir now started Anduril. Well, guess what? Founders Fund put 25 million into Anduril during the seed fund, led a few more rounds, and right now their stake is worth billions upon billions of dollars. So my thinking is Palantir is almost like a pseudo incubator for the next generation of mega companies that are going to be out there, the YouTubes of the world, the Yelps of the world, and all this other stuff. And that's how they hire. They hire people that are ambitious. And this is the part that's going to shock everyone. They have a flat hierarchy. Okay? What that means is that there's not much room for growth upward at Palantir. If you look at one of the chief complaints that a lot of employees that left, it's that literally there was nowhere for them to go. Like once you're at Palantir, you spend about 4 or 5 years. The only way that you're going to move up is by moving out and founding your own companies. But guess what? Because you have that Palantir pedigree, VC funds are ready to throw money at you. And I'm sure, Amit, you know this. If you have Palantir behind your name, you have Stanford behind your name, or an MIT behind your name, VC funds, you could say, hey, I have an idea for rubber dog shit, and people will fucking throw money at you. And I'm not talking about small.
What type of rubber dog shit? Tell me more.
You know, they'll be like, oh, does it have Wi-Fi? You know, does it have Bluetooth? Like,
does
literally.
It have dark mode? If it has dark mode, I'll give you 5 million right now.
Yeah, so it's the stupidest thing, but it works, right? And so a lot of these founders, they're going out there and developing new products that are just being utilized all over the technology industry. And I think that's one of those things that on one hand, I love Palantir that it's doing that, but I'm like, bro, how are you building shareholder value? That's what I want to know. Like, dude, you're taking.
No. Chris, I think you're totally wrong on this. If they keep that pipeline, ambitious people are going to leave. They're not going to stay at a company forever. They're going to do their own thing. But as long as you keep getting ambitious people in the pipeline, you're good to go.
No, but that's my point. That how are they creating value for Palantir, right? Imagine right now, instead of
3 years and then they go start their own thing.
No, but that's what I'm trying to tell you. That hey, listen, instead of building the product like Anduril for all these other things, why not develop that product at Palantir and then be able to sell that product and make the shareholders tons of money instead of your private VC friends, right? Like Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel threw money at Anduril really early in their life cycle. The dude is probably up right now 50,000%, right? So why is he going to invest more money into Palantir, right? Where their potential growth is maybe 5, 10x, where on the VC side, he can get 100x or even 1,000x. Right. So one of the things that I'm starting to see, and I kind of hate retail, and especially a lot of us retail, we will never have access to the same level of returns these VC people do. And it's becoming more and more of an insulated system where literally it's like if you're in the know and if you're one of these people who already has money, you have the opportunity to make exponentially more money. And the wealth is just being concentrated. And majority of that concentration of wealth is happening in California, right? Where a lot of those VCs are.
That's the VC world, right?
No, but see here, that's the thing. Like, look at Databricks, right? Databricks, the last round that they didn't even need the money. Do you know what they did with their entire round? They took their money and put it into other smaller companies that they're already working with. Every single Silicon Valley major company right now, whether it's Google, Salesforce, they all have these fucking VC arms, right? That basically invest in these startup companies that end up growing exponentially, right? Palantir and the management at Palantir realized this a long time ago and said, hey, listen, why are we trying to just build value for shareholders and going public? Why don't we incubate these people, turn them into the next wealth creators, and then profit off of their wealth, right? And I'm
But
not
you
a
also
big
get
fan
the
of that.
years of hard work they put in to build Palantir. I mean, I think it's a win-win.
I don't think so. I
Don't you
would
think that
rather,
that's what
yeah.
they're trying to do with the SPAC investments, though?
No, but see, that's the key. Like, why? The SPAC investments don't make any sense because those are already mature companies, right? Like, if you look at Snowflake right now, Snowflake Ventures is investing in other AI companies that it works with regularly, so that this way the value ultimately is going to be with the Snowflake shareholders. Where is Palantir parking its money? Does Palantir even have a VC arm? It's got 2.4 billion in cash. Why aren't they deploying that with smaller companies that have exponential returns? Why are they putting money in SPACs? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. That's all.
Why does Apple have $200 billion on their balance sheet?
Because they generate more cash than they know what to do with, dude. Like, literally, if they,
Who should
like,
Apple buy right now? Does anyone who should Apple buy if they had to buy?
nobody,
In
dude.
the oil
No,
company.
buy themselves, dude. Buy their own stock. That's what they've been doing. Why would you want to not buy your own stock, especially if you know that your company's growing, you're healthy, you know? So, no, Palantir and Apple are in two different leagues of their own. So, yeah.
Okay, not bad. If I was Apple, I was talking to Alex from Ticker Symbol U. He was thinking they should buy Snapchat because iMessage, AR, VR, headsets, Snapchat, you get 400 million users. Everyone has iMessage. There's like something that could happen there if Apple really wants to compete with Facebook and Google for advertising as well.
I think the big thing needs to happen where, like, I think I guess Apple doesn't have as much advertising, but so I guess that could be a good synergy because they could use that advertising dollars and expand on that. But I think where we're going to continue to see tech move more and more into, or these big tech companies, is exactly what Amazon did when they bought Whole Foods. We're going to see something transformational. Like, are they going to buy a Zillow? And it's going to be like, why the hell would they buy Zillow? Right? And when Amazon went to go buy Whole Foods, everyone was like, why the hell is Amazon buying Whole Foods? But now it just makes sense because of just the integrated technology they're going to implement into it. And if you're able to say do the same with Zillow or something like that, where now you're getting into smart home technology of being, having the ability to, I don't know, run analytics through or have services through, say, a Zillow, it might not necessarily make 100% sense right now, but if you're able to connect, all those things into, say, a Zillow and kind of have a broader network associated with it, it might make sense in the long term. It might not make sense right now.
Apple has to also be careful when it comes to investing and buying companies that could be seen as monopolistic, right? So everyone's already accusing Apple of having monopolistic practices in the way they do things. Like iMessage right now, there's a lot of complaints on how iMessage backend technology is way different. And Google right now is like, look, we can't even break into sometime the messaging market because of the way that Apple has basically taken this form of it. So right now the Titans are kind of in the process of battling each other a little bit. And the one thing you don't want is you don't want the perception of monopoly, right? If you look at 0 to 1, the best monopolies are the ones that no one can see, right? Yeah, I have it too. It's over there somewhere. But basically that's what it is.
Why don't you have it near the Snowflake book?
Huh? Because the Snowflake book is my favorite book right now, dude.
Okay.
I'm
So
actually
when are you buying down here?
I am not buying Palantir until I told you one of two things happens. One,
Okay,
either
hold
Alex.
on. I don't want to hear that. Joel, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't think the game has even started with Palantir. I think we're just speculating on a few down quarters, and everybody's afraid that all the pieces of the pie are going to be eaten up by Snowflake and Databricks and stuff like that, when really the pie is expanding. And if you have a long-term perspective, I think, valuations are extremely inflated right now. Just in general, as we think about billion-dollar companies, it makes us think, oh, maybe, there's not that much growth. But, from my perspective, world GDP growth is at an exponential rate. And we will see multi-10 trillion, $50 trillion companies in the future. So I think I'm not saying that Palantir is going to be $1 trillion company, but I think the game hasn't even started with Palantir yet.
The only thing I would say to you, Joel, about that is when you try to look at a company, right? You should always try to invest in the leaders in that specific category. So an example and this is a mistake that I made a long time ago, where I saw Apple and I saw BlackBerry, and I was like, well, Apple's already like 10 times the value of what BlackBerry's worth. BlackBerry makes phones too. Eventually BlackBerry is going to go up because, they might take some market share, blah, blah. Dude, if you have a great product and you become so ingrained into the market, it's really hard for your competitors to come up and then eventually take you off the throne. Right now, that's one of the key things with Snowflake. Everyone and their mother knows about Snowflake, uses Snowflake. Same thing with Databricks. Not that many people use Palantir. So I'm not saying that Palantir can't grow, and I'm totally with it. I think Palantir still has, at a conservative amount, be a 3-4x company by 2030. All right, so don't get me wrong. It's still a good investment, especially at the current prices. My thing right now is that I just see more opportunities in other areas of the market because of the giant sell-off that we had. Had we not had this sell-off and the companies were all like still highly valued and Palantir was undervalued, bro, I would be in Palantir right now, But my thing is, I buy based on the current information that's out there. And what I see with Palantir is they have a slowing growth rate. Right? Other companies are still growing really fast and really high. And so the potential for them to keep up that growth is still there, whereas Palantir is slowing down. If Palantir reaccelerates its growth, dude, I'll be the first one to get in again. And if I have to pay a little bit of a premium to get in at a higher price, that's fine. I'm willing to accept that,
I have a question as we end off the stream about Meta. Meta ended at 146 today. They ended 2017 at 176. It's trading 11 times EV to free cash flow, 3.9 times price to sales. They do 120 billion in revenue. Their market cap is less than $400 billion. 120 billion in revenue, market cap on a tech company, less than 400 billion, less than 3 times revenue. So, what are your thoughts on Meta? Is it a buy right now? How are you feeling about it?
I would say, yeah.
Or Chris, go ahead. Then Joel. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Facebook is Meta is definitely being undervalued right now, and that's one of those companies that I would say provides a better value proposition than Palantir at the moment because their cash flows are still there. Yeah, they're not growing as much, but their cash flows are still there. They're already converting a lot of things to reels. I'm starting to see traction on that. And you have a CEO who's been known to be a performer, right? It's not like Zuckerberg hasn't proven himself over the last 12 years in being a successful CEO. They have a line of new products that are coming out, right? And they're still cash flow positive by a huge margin, right? So yeah, in terms of ad spending, they may see some small hits here and there, but dude, they're still generating a ton of cash and they're realigning their business. So I think right now, Facebook is definitely a buy, but I would say I'm not one of those people that just goes in balls deep saying, oh, you know what, I feel like this is the absolute bottom. I'm going to go all in on this company. Like, dude, there's no such thing as all in for me. I don't do that. If anything, I'll start a small position and then add to it slowly and just DCA into it until I feel that, hey, either this company has reached a point where the profit is enough, or I've sustained enough of a loss, or should I say enough of a DCA that I can get out without too much of a loss, right? So that's the key. Like, I know myself as an investor, and I like to DCA, but yeah, I don't think there's there's no such thing as an absolute bottom on any company.
Joel, thoughts on Facebook?
I just can't invest in Facebook because it goes against my investment philosophy as a whole. Like Blake Anderson is saying in the chat, I just can't support them as a company. I have no doubt that they are a cash generating machine, but I just don't believe they're providing value for the world as a whole. And that's why I'm 90% in Tesla, because I believe they are providing value for the world, especially what we're going to see in the energy sector in the next 10 years with Tesla. Meta is, especially from that Joe Rogan interview, it does not jive with me at all, and what they're and how left they are. I can't support that company.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah, I agree with the left-facing piece of it. I think they're very political, and I've done some advertising on Facebook for some of my side businesses, and it's a pain in the butt. Like one time I was mentioning Colombia. I was working with a Colombia natural gas company. Anyway, more of the story is they blocked my ad because I was mentioning Colombia, and it was during the time when Colombia was going through some unrest, and so some small things like that. But regardless, the thing that I believe is the most bullish part about Meta, which I actually encouraged, was their move towards the metaverse. I think that will be
Really, you were excited for that.
I think it's a wise business decision for them because it's kind of spinning the company. While I think they're getting a lot of heat for it right now, in the 10, 20 years down the road, that's where everyone is going to be. I think that the problem that I see with it is that coupled with the social media aspect of things will be Facebook's only true revenue. Whereas I think that there's other companies, and I think Facebook being very open about it and very public about it, I think unfortunately that's really their only play in the playbook right now, other than their social media police, where Microsoft is also doing the same. They're also getting involved into the metaverse aspect of things as well. But you don't hear them, and you don't hear the other big tech companies basically bursting out on top of the mountains saying, you know, this is where our company is heading, because it's a very small growth engine at the moment and it will expand. And I think, unfortunately, while Facebook has a lead in Meta right now with the Oculus out, and I think I've heard a lot of great things about the Oculus and people, and I've also heard some negative things about people getting headaches and stuff and the like, I feel as though the business application of being able to incorporate, which obviously comes into Microsoft space more often than not, will be where the true use of, say, those VR headsets come into play. And so I feel like Microsoft's being very quiet about it, but I think unfortunately in the long term, Microsoft will be the winner in the VR space. And
that makes you less bullish for Facebook.
I think in the short term, I think it's a good thing for them, because otherwise, if you just have the social media aspect of things, it's going to probably wane off at some point. But I think it's still very profitable, high margins for them. And if they can kind of keep attracting folks through some of the work that they're doing, like Chris said, very profitable company. But I think that they need to be more like, and I think this is their problem, is they're very focused on, say, social media. They need to be more like a conglomerate, like a Google, like an Amazon, like an Apple, where you have different avenues of income. So if unfortunately one of them goes away, like your social media aspect of things, then you have other legs to stand on. But I think Facebook as a whole is vastly underrepresented. They have Facebook Marketplace, which has absolutely destroyed eBay. They have WhatsApp, which is unmonetized. There's a lot of opportunity that Facebook could have to monetize things, which they have yet to do, because they're more concerned about getting 2.5 to 3 billion active users on a monthly basis. And that's their biggest concern. Then they can do very similar to what Amazon has done, build out the infrastructure, get as many eyes onto it as possible, get people addicted, and then start to turn on the taps. But I agree with our friend, Mr. Tesla Hyperbole over there. I don't like the company's politics. So it's hard for me to.
Do you own any Meta at all?
Through the S&P 500, I do. But I was very bullish on their move towards Meta, like going from, say, social media to Meta. But now, and I sold it very quickly. I held it for about a week. I was going to establish a position. I was choosing between Microsoft and Facebook. And I was going to build a pretty substantial position of a couple hundred shares. And unfortunate for me, I think I broke even on it. And I think I decided instead, I forget what it was. I think I ended up putting all that money into Amazon before the split. And then I decided that if I were to, because now my big tech investments are Palantir, Amazon, Google. If I were to invest in a fourth, I guess I have some Alibaba as well. If I were to invest in a fifth, rather, it would be Microsoft rather than Meta, because I like I still think that cloud is in its infancy as well. And then I think once cloud kind of plays out, that runway plays out, it'll slowly start to merge over into the VR space. Sorry, very long-winded answer.
I think Microsoft is going to overtake Apple one of these days. It's definitely going to happen.
What?
Like, yep.
Why? What product? What gets
cloud computing, man?
Cloud. Look, there's 3 areas where I see Microsoft dominating. Number 1, Azure is killing it. They're gaining market share like crazy, right? Their enterprise, dude, their products are just 80, 90% market share for most of the products, and every single S&P 500 company lives off of their products, right? That's a reoccurring revenue stream that ties them right into the ecosystem. They just acquired Nuance. They're working in healthcare now, right? With their headsets, they got a giant contract from the Army. I'm telling you right now, Microsoft has so many avenues for income. It's not even funny. This is not the Microsoft of the Zune days. Okay, that's gone. That's not there anymore. This is Microsoft under Satya Nadella, who's like literally probably one of the best CEOs in the world right now. You know, I do want to show you guys a clip on an economist that I follow very routinely. She's amazing. She had a couple of things to say about inflation.
So many people for so many years. I never have helped out so many people for the past 7-8 months. And I remember something, right? Let me tell you something. A couple of months ago, I was helping a cousin get an apartment, right? And now I'm helping somebody else get an apartment. Bro, I was looking at some areas, the way that the prices soar up, the way that the prices soar up, because I'm guessing that even no motherfucking inventory when it comes to homes they're selling right now. Nobody's even trying to sell their fucking homes. So everybody's like, yo, when the interest rate is good, that is high, that's great, because people have to fucking sell their home for less, so you could buy a home for less. And it's like, bitch, it doesn't matter if the interest rate is motherfucking high as fuck. And actually, bitch, there's not even inventory. That's one, but that's another shit. Now let's talk about the fact that the fucking rent. I was talking about buying a house. Now I'm going back to rent. Like, how are people surviving? I want to know. Like my family and my friends, they're so grateful to have me. But it's just like, yo, what happened to people that don't have a me? What's going on with the people that don't have a me? Now I just read some shit that like Britain and LA, they're going to start having more blackouts because Britain got to pay double the price when it comes to electricity, and LA and shit. And sometimes, one thing that people was coming at me every single time that we saying that something bad in the economy is happening. And people be like, well, you was the one that told people to vote for Joe Biden. But this is the thing, right? After the pandemic, I knew that this shit was going to happen. I knew we was going to have a financial crisis. And the thing about it is that this is not only in America. It's all over the world. All over the world. Like, I went to the Dominican Republic, and shit is expensive out there, too. And this shit is all over the world, bitch. But right now, though, like, niggas this is insane. And I wanna tell y'all that I get it. Don't ever think I'm one of these rich people that don't get it and don't give a fuck. I get it. I care, but I can't do shit about it, bitch. I can't do shit about it. I don't got no positions in the motherfucking government.
She has some advice for everyone. Just listen.
But leave the camera. Hold on. Let me clean the motherfucking camera with my titty.
She's got some great advice. Keeps listening. Watch.
Oh shit! I think I fucked up this shit up. So yeah, oh shit, for sure. Like, my camera was dirty for sure. Cause now you can see a bitch for more clear. So all I want to say is, bro, I feel. Can I borrow some? Jason, did you borrow some money? How about you help me make motherfucking money? How about that? Not like on some serious shit. Like, it's like, this is insane. Like, the way that the rent has been rising, I just really be wondering, like, yo, how is people fucking keeping up? Because all these promises are being made, but living is unbearable. Like, let me tell you something. If you planning to fucking move out your parents' house, bitch, you better fucking go clean them motherfucking dishes right now, bitch. If your mom is making you, if it's annoying to live with your mom, bitch, you better go clean them fucking dishes. Because the rent right now, bitch, I don't know, you're gonna have to sell your soul or your pussy. You gonna have to suck some dick. You gonna have to sell. You gonna sell your. You gonna have to sell some dick, nigga. You gonna have to sell some dick or some pussy, because the rent is really high. Even in the hoods, even in mice, rats, possums, fucking infested motherfucking apartments, bro. And this shit is not fair. Shit is not fair. I feel so bad. I feel so fucking bad, bro. Shit is not fair.
All right. So from the mouth of Cardi B, shit's not fair right now.
You heard it here first.
Oh man.
It was, it's funny because Cardi B actually a couple of years ago, she got political and she endorsed Bernie Sanders and stuff, and her whole thesis was kind of like, poor people deserve a better shot and things like that. But she also,
Kim Kardashian got a law degree. Doesn't mean I'm gonna ask her to goddamn represent me, man.
I agree. No, she also Cardi B also was complaining about taxes. I don't know if you saw that rant. This was like 2019, and she was like, "Why are my taxes so high? I make 10 million. I only get to keep 5 million. All this stuff." So she's actually been reading this stuff for a while. It's just her form of communication is like phenomenal when talking about this.
Bro, she's secretly a Republican. Watch her find out one day. Like, wait, what do you mean Republicans want lower taxes? Huh? Let me know, yo. Let me know. I'm Republican all day. Make America great again, So.
Yes, sir.
All right. That's it for us. Thank you, everyone, for joining. 193 people means the world. Please check out Chris and Matt in Twitter's in the description. I didn't even know Joel was coming on, but I'll update his description, his Twitter in the description as well. Thank you all for being here. Check out the link in the description for Audia, my startup. Would appreciate.
Whoa, hold on. One thing before you go. So, I did a quick poll on Twitter to see if Palantir were to split off, what would you name themselves? I'm just going to read some really funny ones that I got. Let me just go to it real quick.
If Palantir were to rename themselves, yes.
Yeah, let's see. Okay, hold on one second. Palantir, there you go. So I've got Palando. I don't know what the hell that is. Mordor, Gandalf, Valinor, Hogwarts, Silmaril. Okay, Mana. Dude, a lot of these Lord of the Rings references, they're like really hard to pronounce. Mahanaxar, which is the Ring of Doom. Strider, Gollum. Someone said Palando twice. I don't know. What's with Palando? Like, why did everyone name themselves Palando? But, yeah. So, the other ones were ridiculous, but whatever. Someone said called themselves Sauron or the One Ring.
I don't know a good name for Palantir if it wasn't Palantir, man. Palantir is the perfect name. Like,
so they had a trademark.
Factory. That's perfect.
KARP in the chocolate factory. They did have a trademark which they let expire. It's called Anduil. Anduil, I think, has some kind of Lord of the Rings reference. I don't know, but that was one of those things.
Okay. All right. Check out the links in the description. Sign up for Audia. Daily Palantir Audio is there. We'll see you guys next week. It was a great chat. Thank you all for joining. Means the world. Have a great night, everybody.
Take care.
Yeah.